Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regularly scheduled committee hearing of homelessness and poverty. I am joined by Marquise Harris-Dawson and David Rue, and we will call this meeting to order. Colleagues, what I'd like to do is take comments from multiple comment card items first. So anyone who has filled out a comment card on multiple items, including public comment, will start with that. And the first person that we have to speak on items 1, 2, 3, and general public comment is Craig R. Craig R. And if General Dogon could join him? It's Dogan, okay. Thank you. And then if Armando Herman also, and Andrea Theodore. If the four of you could please have a seat, we'll start our public comment. Yes, sir, you have 2 minutes. Everyone has 2 minutes for general, 2 minutes for multiple and 1 minute for general. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Craig R. I'm from the Los Angeles Community Action Network. I'm a member and organizer at LA Can. I'm coming here to comment basically on the lack of involvement of community groups and advocates for the homeless like LA Can in the comprehensive homeless strategy. I believe there's supposed to be a Meg Barkley's here. I believe there's supposed to be a working group that would handle that, including a new liaison to Skid Row named Kirkpatrick Tyler. I haven't met the gentleman yet, but what I want to say is that. He's right there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that
there
you?
You go.
Will you, Meg Barkley, and Eric Garcetti ought to stop fooling around and bring in people like LA Can and USEP and the people who are doing work on Skid Row, in Skid Row, in order to involve the people at the ground level who understand the problem and understand the solutions to permanent supportive housing, lack of thereof. And the solution to the problem is not the bridge to nowhere, the bridge home. Because the bridge home, which is the bridge to nowhere, is all about posturing for political advantage and stalling. We all know that. It's put out as a humanitarian solution in the short term while everything in the pipeline from Triple H gets built. We need to build more permanent supportive housing and stop wasting money with shelters that only have 45 beds in them, like the one near El Pueblo. I mean, it's crazy. What we need to do is build more permanent supportive housing faster and have public housing. In other words, build permanent supportive housing that's owned and operated by the city. Public housing has been abandoned as a non-starting political idea, and we need to be brought back to build more housing faster. That's number one. We need to bring in people from the community like LA Can, USEP, and people on the street who have an understanding of the problem instead of being stalled by people like Eric Garcetti and Meg Barkley, who represents Eric Garcetti. And lastly, we need desperately to find a permanent home for the refresh spot in Skid Row. We're being yanked around about the idea of replacing the spot we're at that's, and I'm speaking now as a member of the Skid Row Community Improvement Coalition. And we're being yanked around about this idea that there's no permanent home. We want the church at the corner of 6th and Crocker to be either leased or bought by the city as a permanent home for the Skid Row refresh spot. And we think that's not an unreasonable request. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we're joined by Councilmember Mike Bonin. Again, General, and then followed by Armando Herman. Is Armando Herman here? Followed by Amar W.
Andrea Theodore.
What's your name?
Andrea Theodore.
Okay. Oh, okay. Sir.
So, yeah, General Dogon, decolonizer with LA Can. I'm just here to speak about the $20 million HEAP funds that was allocated to Skid Row. We see that you already allocated some money for a street sweeping program, for some traumatized shelter beds in the downtown women's center, and then we see you like kind of put the other money in the garage. You know, let me remind you again that it's HEAP, Homeless Emergency Aid Program. So that means emergency means right now. Right, we ain't got money to go in the garage. Right, there's a public health infrastructure that needs to be rebuilt on Skid Row, starting with basic stuff like trash cans, mobile showers, more like Lava May was down there. We can even ask for some mobile trash can trucks. People need to start dumping their own trash. We ain't got to wait for sanitation by the truck to come by. We could have some weekly coming by and just drop everything off, and then by the time sanitation do come, all they got to do is clean the street, right? What they claim they're doing, but they ain't. Right, and so then I want to reiterate about the refresh spot. There's a piece of property almost right across the street from it that's for sale. You know, it could be not only used for a refresh spot, but you got an inside that could be used for other things. You can put housing in there, you can put services, but the bottom line is we got $15 million that shouldn't be sitting in the garage. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Ms. Theodore, before you begin, we're going to go ahead and move to item 1 anyway. Armando Herman, I've called him several times. He's not here. So let's go to item number 1, and then Andrea, you'll be able to speak right after we hear from Mr. Reef.
Item number 1, City Administrative Officer transmittal relative to the Comprehensive Homeless Strategy Quarterly Performance Report for the second quarter of fiscal year 2018-19.
Comment first.
Oh.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to hear public comment first.
Got it. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And then we'll come up, Meg. All right, so I don't know what's happening with my, okay. All right. Wayne from Encino is here as well on item number 1. And Andrea, let's go ahead and hear your comments because I called you up here and you're just my mistake.
My name is Andrea. My partner lives in Skid Row. In SRO housing, and the issue that I want to bring today, the issue of housing accessibility. In his building, there are men and women that have kids that bring in their kids on the weekends. There are 4 or 5 people in these little SRO rooms because they don't have access to family housing, low-income family housing. In 1970, there were 69 low-income housing hotels in Skid Row alone. And right now, we see seniors that are on waiting lists for years. My friend Brenda Gardenhire, she was banned, kicked out of the Weingart Center, and she cannot go re-enter their program for a year. I mean, who are these programs for? You have people coming into the state of California that can get housing, SRO housing, in a couple years, but you have, elderly people that either need assistance to get housing or they're not being housed properly and they're actually being kicked out of these programs.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Theodore. All right, so I believe I understand this right. We just have one speaker for item number 1. Yep, and that is Wayne Spindler. You have 1 minute.
Yes, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, so we have the quarterly performance report. I'm sorry. I'm like David Rowe. I can't read. I'm a fucking retard. So, the second quarter of fiscal year 2018 to 2019, you have done nothing. And I notice we have a chair turned around because Marquise Harris, Dildo Harris, Dawson Weezer does not want to hear our fucking comments because he's failed. Yes, the first councilman in the history of the city to admit he's failed you in the community. He has finally admitted it, and we respect that very much. We like the fact, and Mike Brown would turn his chair, but he's been using drugs again, so it's difficult for him to maintain his balance without falling out of his fucking chair. So again, file and receive this report.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. God bless.
Is anyone in here, is this their very first committee hearing by any chance? Their very first? Then let me apologize on this gentleman's behalf because at every committee hearing, we often will hear really vile comments from individuals, but they're exercising their First Amendment right. And this is the forum that they choose to do that. So we apologize for the offensive language you just heard. All right, having said that, now we're ready for the presentation. Thank you. I can apologize if I want to for someone's boorish behavior, and you're out of line. Yes, presentation. Okay, that's an interruption, and that's a disturbance, and so let's not do another one, otherwise you'll be asked to leave. Please.
Good afternoon, Meg Barclay, City Homeless Coordinator with the City Administrative Officer's Office, and I'm joined by...
Hi, I'm Susie Rios-Bellinat, also at the CAO's office, Senior Admin Analyst.
So the item before you is the Comprehensive Homeless Strategy Quarterly Performance Report for the second quarter of fiscal year 2018-19. It describes key accomplishments in the past quarter, the status of the city's Homeless Emergency Aid Program grant from the state, status of the Bridge Home Program, and metrics for the for the second quarter and the year to date. Most notably, we provide updates on the Proposition HHH Citizens Oversight and Administrative Oversight Committee's recommendations to the Council to establish a pilot program using 10% or $120 million of Prop HHH bond authority, which you'll be hearing in coming meetings. Also, new affordable housing and supportive housing units that have been financed, units that have been approved through the Transit-Oriented Communities Program, and other efforts to expand affordable housing in the City of LA, and also to expand the Pit Stop program, which included additional HEAP funding to add an additional automatic public toilet-based site in Skid Row, add 2 new sites in Council District 13, 1 in Council District 9, and 1 in Council District 1, and also to add 2 mobile showers in the coming, two mobile showers. Actually, the county is going to let us use mobile showers that they own, and we will pay for the operations. One will be dedicated to the Skid Row area, and one will be rolled out citywide this year, with 2 more being rolled out citywide in the next year. As far as the HEAP program goes, this gives the status of the HEAP commitments as of the end of December 2018, but since then an additional $3 million has been committed from Category 1 to establish 85 trauma-informed interim housing beds for women in Council District 7, and $1.33 million has been established from Category 2, the Skid Row Capital and Operating Support, to establish 119 new beds in cooperation with the county at a site on Paloma. Also, that is related to the Bridge Home Program. Additionally, 2 sites started construction in the last quarter. One of them was in your district, Mr. O'Farrell, which is scheduled to open in 3 weeks. On Schrader, that will be 70 beds, and another site in Mr. Bonin's district at the VA West LA campus, which will be 100 beds. And at the end of December, 4 new sites also had funding motions approved. One of those was on 3rd Street in Council District 1, which will be for individual women and families. That is also scheduled to open in April. A site in Council District 8 on St. Andrews, which would be 100 beds. Another site in CD 11, 154 beds, and a site on Imperial adjacent to Council District 15 for another 100 beds. So that significantly moved forward the pipeline of Bridge Home sites that are under development. And then the last section of the report describes the metrics for this quarter, and the attachments to the report provide the status and next steps for each of the strategies in Attachment 1. And the metrics for all of the strategies in Attachment 2, and then they are organized according to headline metrics in Attachment 3. So we have any questions that you may have.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Colleagues, questions or comments that anyone may have? All right. So this is a regular update, and I want to thank you for your work. We are making progress. I think everyone in this room agrees it can't happen soon enough, and everyone's impatience is very well understood. Absolutely. But the city family is working diligently on these issues, and we want to thank you for your work.
Thank you, Mr.
So
O'Farrell.
colleagues will receive and file item number 1.
Thank you.
Thank you. Which brings us to item number 2. Mr. Reif, if you'd please read the item.
Item number 2, Proposition HHH Administrative Oversight Committee transmittal relative to proposed recommendations from Proposition HHH Citizens Oversight Committee on Proposition HHH Permanent Supportive Housing Loan Program Commitments, fiscal year 2018-19, round 2, call for projects.
Thank you. And gentlemen, again, we're going to take public comment cards first. Sorry. I should have said that. Generally, that's what we'll do. So I appreciate that. But we'll be ready. All right, so what we have are a number of speakers. We have Natana, if I pronounce that right, Natana, followed by Ms. Catherine Hicks, followed by big E, little e, is it E? And then followed by Enrique Velasquez. If your name was called, if you could please step forward. Thank you. And please begin.
Great, thank you so much. So my name's Natana Cabanas. I actually am a resident of the area that is a quarter of a mile, roughly, I didn't do a map quest, of where the proposed Mercy Housing building is going to go in. And I just wanted to give you a little bit more information that might be helpful in your decision to approve the loan. So Mercy Housing has done an incredible job with reaching out to the community. When they wanted to build this facility, they reached out to us immediately. They held 3 specific meetings, one with a large amount of opposition. I can't say everyone's in favor. They're concerned about safety, crime, and property values, but what I can say is that Mercy Housing has done its due diligence to do community hearings, to hear community concerns, and to host meetings related to the most impacted residents. They also have a website that we can promote and ask questions to, so they've done an incredible job with outreach.
Terrific. Thank you. Ms. Hicks.
Hello, my name is Catherine Hicks, and I'm here representing the League of Women Voters, Los Angeles. The League of Women Voters welcomes any and all attempts to solve our city's homelessness crisis, including the construction of permanent supportive housing. To that effect, I want to speak in support of all Proposition HHH applications considered by this committee. Especially Mercy Housing's Proposition HHH application for their property in Sherman Oaks. We need this housing desperately, and the League of Women Voters stands ready to continue working with our City Council to advocate for permanent supportive housing throughout LA. And I'd just like to say that, you know, we've just got to keep going. I mean, there's always going to be local fears. Once they see the architecture is beautiful, the homeless get off the street, there's on-site supervision and security. It's a plus, and as people's fears calm down, hopefully we can just keep this thing moving. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Enrique Velasquez, followed by Gabriela Garcia.
I'm Enrique Velasquez with the Everyone In campaign from United Way. We have been in partnership with Mercy Housing for this specific project. I happen to be in the last community meeting they had, to let people know about this project. And yes, there was one person not totally convinced about the project, but what the person was lacking is that this is a project for senior citizens, very needed project. I don't know if you know, but a 22% surge in homelessness among citizens in our city just happened. This is numbers that took place, that happened last year. This is not taking into account the homeless count day. Sorry,
the current, the one that we just did?
Yeah. So there may be, a higher number, but I ask you to support this proposition before you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Gabriela Garcia.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gabriela. I'm also with the United Way Everyone In campaign, and our campaign is turning 1 year old, so we're going to have a big celebration March 9th, a plug. You can come down to Union Station and celebrate, some of the strategies and some of the work we've been doing specifically to address homelessness, and at the core of it, what we've seen bring stability is housing. So we are here to speak in support of the Mercy Housing. We know that it's needed. We've been part of the process, and part of our role as organizers on the ground is to be the bridge in ensuring that these projects get built and that there's advocates, that there's residents speaking in support of it and saying, yes, we want it in our backyard, and because we need it, right? And we need various other strategies. Bridge housing is one. We need affordable housing to house our other population that might be one paycheck away from being homeless. And so we need multiple strategies, but supportive housing is one that we know is core to the viability of people staying housed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. All right, now we'll have the presenters. Sure. Mr. Rue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to really thank, especially my constituents. I came out from Sherman Oaks, especially Antonia, who was my former chair of my Discretionary Funds Task Force. Thank you so much for coming out. And I really want to thank the folks who came out to support the Mercy Housing. we're not giving up. I'm not giving up. None of my colleagues are giving up. No matter how much we get shouted down, we know this is the right thing to do, and we're all supportive. And this is why I really thank the folks from Sherman Oaks coming out to show that there are many people who are in support of housing for people experiencing homelessness. But I want to thank my constituents for coming out. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Ed Gibson from Housing Community Investment Department. I'm joined today by Tim Elliott. We're here to present before you the latest round of applications that we've received. Just as background, we do 3 call for projects each year with regards to HHH. To date, we have over 55 projects with commitments totaling 3,711 units. Currently, there are 11 projects totaling about 821 units in construction with local facilities. Then we have another 3 projects who have closed their construction loans.
Can we pause for just a moment?
Sure can.
It's just kind of distracting. Let's just wait until this ends. Are we disrupting the meeting, or have we settled whatever is going on over there? Okay, I think we've settled it. Please continue.
Certainly. So to date, we have 11 projects in construction totaling 821 units. We have 3 projects that have closed their construction loan, which means it's about 218 units. So they'll be starting construction within about the next 60 days or so as they tie out their construction contracts. And then behind that, we have an additional 7 projects, which we project in the next 90 days will close their construction loan. As of February 28th, we opened up a 3rd round for this year, the final round for the fiscal year for applications. And since it's only been about a week, we have already received 20 applications to date for a future upcoming pending approval. So today, Tim's going to go through the current round that was submitted in November and gone through its process and those 26 applications.
Thank you.
So, as Ed said, we put out a call for projects in November, and we got 26 applications. We've already brought one through committee, the Vermont-Manchester project, so that they could have a commitment in time to apply for the state cap-and-trade program. So there were, so that's 23 projects. We're recommending those 23, that's 1,497 new units, 1,200 are supportive, and 266 are affordable, and of the supportive, 688 units will be reserved for the chronically homeless. Now, this will bring us up.
How much is that chronically homeless? How much?
680.
Oh, 688.
680. Thank you.
So this will increase the total from 55 to 79 projects with commitments, and bring us up to 5,300 units, of which 4,107 are supportive housing, and there'll be 11, almost 1,200 affordable units in that mix. So these commitments, along with the facilities program and the housing challenge, which is going to come forward at a later date, will bring the total encumbrances up to $984 million out of the $1.2 billion that we had started with. The average development cost for a unit in this round was $507,000.
570?
570.
No,
507. 507.
507.
507, which is comparable to the 511 that we've been seeing throughout the life of the program. So the projects are a mix of high rise. There's some high rises, some mid rise buildings, but there's lower cost adaptive reuse and non-tax credit projects, of which one would need special consideration to be eligible. But that project has a very low, under $300,000 development per unit development cost, and we think it's worth stretching a little to bring that one in. Unlike previous rounds, 2 of the projects already have their building permits and are ready to start. And the ones that don't need tax credits don't have to go through that extended process. So some of these can get going, and one might be done by the end of the year if we get on it. So the 23 projects were in 11 different council districts, and 4 of the projects were located in what we call high resource areas, including Sherman Oaks that we just talked about in Eagle Rock. There's two of the applications that are not being recommended because they're city-owned properties that the developers were proposing the cap and trade money, and the city decided not to be a co-applicant with them. So they're going to come back, hopefully this next round, with a different funding strategy, and we'll be able to move those forward.
Did you have anything to add, Mr. Gibson?
Just one comment. Always been a great conversation about our subsidy per unit versus the per unit cost. As most know, or from Mayor, that the maximum subsidy per unit given any project is basically the $220,000 a door on a 4% tax credit specific transaction, and that we'll only pay for a portion of a project's cost, so other financing will need to be assembled. So even when the costs of a project are actually higher, our input and our value added is limited to the $220,000 a door with HHH.
Right, and in this round, it's actually averaging out at 180.
Okay. So ostensibly, we could get more units out of that readjustment.
The goal with all the leveraging is to get as many units as we can. With additional funding sources coming on from the state, from SB1 and SB2, mental health dollars, if you will, coming through the county, that we were expecting all those dollars much sooner to this party to assist us. They're now coming online, and so we will be able to leverage against those as well, thus providing additional units.
Terrific. All right. As far as, so you mentioned that February 28th, just this past week, do you anticipate that as the final round?
It well could be.
It very well could be. And you have 20 applications so far.
20 applications been opened up in our system.
Have been opened up in the system.
Yeah. Can't see what they are, but we can see 20 people have opened.
Right. So sort of assessing those 20 applications could determine whether or not that's the final call. Correct?
Right.
That is correct.
So we're anticipating this being a competitive round,
Mm-hmm.
and we've always had funding goals in the regulations, but we're now advising people that it's going to be competitive and that you should pay attention to those, like leverage and asking for less than the maximum amount of money.
And how long will the call time be open?
During the month of, it'll be closed on March 29th.
Okay, so it's essentially a 30-day. And that has been the practice?
That's been the practice.
Okay. In relation to the stated goals, gosh, I want to say well over a year ago, the 222 units per council district, how are we doing on that in terms of the geographic distribution? Any idea?
We're actually doing well. This last round was across 11 different council districts. Some classic council districts are still seeing a larger number than others, but we're doing our best to get them across. Certain areas have difficulty with high-cost land and just constraints of land, period, that's available and able to build and able to purchase. But distribution has been quite good. We do have incentives for high-opportunity areas to try to encourage that. It will always be a challenge, but considering all, we're not doing too bad.
And would you characterize that you are fulfilling the requirement that HHH funds for affordable housing not exceed 20% of the total HHH amount?
Only 23% of the units are straight affordable.
23%.
Of the units. So let's just clarify. So the bond initiative says no more than 20% of the proceeds will be spent on just plain affordable housing units.
Right.
Not including. So we are well below that. I wish I used to have that number.
Well, the subsidy amount per affordable units is only $100,000, and we've been spending more like $220 on the supportive units.
Permanent supportive. Okay.
The overall percentage is still
You're
well below.
You're within that range.
Like 7%.
Oh, for the record, you're at 7%, right around.
Last time we checked, it was 7.
Yes.
Okay.
So we use that portion of the units because part of the challenge with financing permanent supportive housing is everybody only wants to finance the specific permanent supportive housing unit. If that's so and everybody leverages, then you'll have 10 units that get financed and the other 5 or 10 in a building, if you will, just for numbers' sake, don't get any financing at all, and that will not finance the building.
Right.
So with that authority under that 20% provision, we use it. If you finance 50% of the building as permanent supportive housing, we will finance the rest and capture it under HHH as affordable housing. In addition, it'll add flexibility to those units. Not everybody fits exactly in the box of permanent supportive housing, but this actually provides a way for them to be in the building and get the services they need, even though they don't necessarily fit the exact box.
As long as we all feel that you're maximizing the leverage we have to build the, get toward the 10,000 units, then we're probably headed in the right direction. Notwithstanding that we can't control the ultimate per unit cost, I understand that better now. But as long as we're getting a good return on our investment, then that's really the bottom line, right?
And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to balance out, per unit cost aside for a second, but we're trying to balance out where the subsidy is to making sure the developments actually get built, and then keeping that in cost. So as Tim talks about, our overall subsidy is much lower when you combine all the units. That's a good thing in stretching it out. I will also say with the other sources coming online, it also provides an opportunity for us to resize certain projects. So if you do go for those state funds, you do go for those county funds, we can take a look at recapturing some of those proceeds that are no longer needed inside the transaction and then repurpose those for additional units later on. So all those strategies have to come into play.
And I mentioned this at the last meeting, just a lot of these units that are being built they look nicer than my home, which is great. Everyone deserves a really nice place to live, regardless. But just as long as we're keeping costs down as well in terms of, the over-the-top sort of interior elements, as long as you're taking a good close look at maximizing costs as well.
Yeah, we try to keep track of costs, a definite challenge inside every environment. The other key is we need to make sure that it's actually a quality project that's going to hold up for the term of the time. We're talking about a 55-year loan. It's got to have the correct bones necessary. It also needed to meet all the neighborhood concerns and address those. A lot of things done inside the project may look very expensive, but if you take a closer look, they weren't high-cost items. If you go to a couple of projects, you'll see the floors are actually polished concrete. Highly durable, looks pretty good, has a modern feel, nice place. So
Terrific. That's terrific. Well, they should be beautiful, and I think from what I've seen, and the production of permanent supportive housing that precedes HHH in my district, you would think that they're luxury apartments, and that's a nice thing, for people to be able to experience. Okay, Mr. Harris-Dawson. No, we're good? Mr. Bonnet? No? Mr. Rue? What do we have here? All right. Okay, so we'll approve this item without objection. I will. Thank you. And then for the record, multiple item, yes. Okay. For the record, multiple item comment has been closed. However, Mr. Spindler has submitted additional comment cards. Okay, even though he had already had 3 minutes, we'll give him as a courtesy 1 more minute to speak. Okay. So, Mr. Spindler, as per the city attorney's request to give you another minute, are you here to speak in general public comment?
Oh, okay.
All right, I guess you are.
Minute of public comment, yeah. So go ahead there.
Yes, Mr. Harris-Dawson, you are hereby excused from the meeting, yes. So, thank you again for staying and enjoying the public comment and all of your recitations. And what I especially like is the new procedure when public comment is being taken, one of the council members comes over and greets you. I think that's a very good thing. I hope that Mr. Harris-Dawson has additional $100 bills to hand out to all the nice people in attendance today. Very good. It's good to give cash to all of the people here because Mr. Weezer has about $2 million of it still missing. So we need to give it back to the people. Yes. And we want to thank everybody who stays here and puts up with all of the intolerant bullshit that goes on. Let's build housing and let's put Jose Weezer in federal prison.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item number 3. our enhanced comprehensive homeless strategy. Mr. Reef, could you please read the item?
Item number 3, City Administrative Officer transmittals relative to the proposed enhanced comprehensive homeless strategy.
No speakers? And we have no speakers on this item left, so please step forward.
Good afternoon, Meg Barclay, City Homeless Coordinator with the City Administrative Officer.
Susie Rios-Belnat, once again, CAO's Office, Senior Admin Analyst.
Thank you.
So before you is the proposed enhanced comprehensive homeless strategy.
Everyone, shh. Let's make sure that the speakers have everyone's full attention, please. Thank you.
Before we get into the presentation, I want to acknowledge the strategy leads that are here and all of the staff that have done a lot of work to get us to having this final document in front of us. And we don't have any members of the Lived Experience Working Group here, but we did form a Lived Experience Working Group that also worked alongside strategy leads to finalize the briefs that are attached to the strategy description. And we really do look forward to working with them throughout implementation of the strategy as well. So in August of 2018, we received approval for a new framework. This committee approved approval for a new framework for the CHS, which is the graphic in the report that is before you. Trying to remember what page it's on. It looks like this. Okay. And it was the new structure for the CHS. It was redesigned to be more action-oriented and informed by the first 2 years of implementation of the CHS. It represents the actions needed for a comprehensive and effective response to homelessness. And if you look at Figure 1 on page 4 of the strategy, you have the framework and organized the 62 active strategies into 6 functional categories of governance, planning, policy, which includes 5 strategies, programs and systems, which includes 8 strategies. Those are the 2 that are groups of strategies. Also, annual evaluation and partner acknowledgement.
One moment, sir. Can we keep down the conversation? It's literally distracting. It's in the back behind the wall. Yeah, it's just a little too distracting. Thank you. Please continue.
Sure. So each strategy corresponds to at least one strategy from the original CHS, and all of the strategies are represented within the structure, with the exception of the 2 strategies, 5A and 5B, that were closed very early on or completed very early on with the creation of the Homeless Strategy Committee and the establishment of the Homeless Coordinator position in the Office of the CAO. Also, the metrics proposed for each strategy preserve the metrics that are currently being reported and were reported earlier today in the existing comprehensive or the current comprehensive homeless strategy, but they also include additional metrics that were proposed by strategy leads to more fully represent the work that's being done to implement the strategies. And most notably, I would say, a really good example of that are the outreach. In the outreach strategy, we didn't have an outreach strategy in the original CHS. That's a huge component, especially of the work that the city is funding to address homelessness on the ground in the city of Los Angeles. And now we have more metrics to represent that work that are tracking the outcomes of that work. The leads for each of the enhanced CHS strategies are based on the leads for their component strategies from the original strategy. And that's those leads really came together to finalize the brief. So it was sort of this merging of the efforts and the experience of the leads of the original strategies into the development of these comprehensive strategies. And since the framework was adopted, the leads have collaborated on these briefs that are attached to the strategy, and each brief includes the goal of the strategy, the departmental leads, ongoing responsibilities of these leads, action steps to accomplish the strategy's goals, the metrics to measure their progress, and also the listing of the strategies from the original CHS that were rolled into this existing or the new enhanced strategy. The briefs for strategies 5 and 6 are not included, but we want to further develop those after the enhanced CHS is adopted, again with input from the leads from all of the other strategies. Strategy leads met on January 10th to finalize the leads, and that was where we introduced the lived experience working group, and they provided feedback into those day-long session that we had to finalize the briefs. And we will be meeting with them at least quarterly to go over each quarterly performance report, get their feedback, potentially connect them with leads from strategies they may have questions about or input based on their experience, but also provide, and they have graciously agreed to serve as a resource to the strategy leads should they have questions about implementation and how it impacts people with lived experience. So we're very much looking forward to incorporating that into the strategy itself. I think another key feature of the Enhanced Comprehensive Homeless Strategy is a new Skid Row place-based strategy, which was an addition to the strategy structure that was approved in the fall. This is really meant to, the strategy itself establishes the steps to establish a long-term plan for Skid Row, and part of that includes stakeholder engagement in developing that long-term plan. And it will also help to establish the usefulness of a place-based approach for other areas of concentration around the city. Another change since the strategy was, or the framework was approved in the fall is initially we had what was called a subpopulation strategy. That group of leads on that strategy, after meeting and talking about it, actually changed the name of the strategy to be refer to vulnerable populations, with the idea of providing accountability to all of the other strategies, specifically on, especially on the programs and system side, as they're being implemented, and whether or not the needs of vulnerable populations are being met through the implementation of those individual strategies themselves. And that group, and I don't know if HSID is here today on that, but they've done a really great job they've taken a lot of ownership over that issue, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that interaction and that interplay plays out. The idea, I think, between having, especially as it relates to the policy strategies and the programs and system strategies, is that they would be sort of a conversation back and forth. There may be policies that impact one or two, or new policies that may impact on the programs and system side, or lessons learned from implementation of programs that might imply new policies. And so looking forward to facilitating the conversation across those different types of strategies as implementation moves forward. So it's a not so brief summary of the Enhanced Comprehensive Homeless Strategy. But also attached to the file is a document that we created in response to a request from the Homeless Strategy Committee. It's a crosswalk, so there's another report that basically provides a lot more detail on the incorporation of the original Comprehensive Homeless Strategy into the Enhanced Strategy. There's two attachments to the document. The first one is just a summary of strategies, and they're sorted. The original strategies are sorted by those that are completed, which are the two that I mentioned earlier in my presentation. Those that we've categorized as completed and ongoing, in that they were report backs, where the information from those reports is informing the implementation of strategies in the enhanced strategy, and then which enhanced strategy they are informing. And then those that are ongoing, and where the work of those strategies continuing under one of the enhanced strategies. And then there's a lot more detail in attachment 2 of each of those, and the electronic version that's online has links to reports or Homeless Strategy Committee agendas or other documents related to that have been generated through the implementation of those strategies. That concludes my presentation.
That's a lot of strategy.
There's so much strategy.
Strategy abounds. Thank you.
Strategies for strategies.
And Mr. Gibson, would HSID like to comment at all? You're good. So some questions. Can you describe the Lived Experience Working Group and their role in the development of the revised, I'll just call it CHS to keep from saying strategy over and over again, and its implementation?
Yes. So this was actually, when we brought the structure through to get approval of the structure, the Homelessness and Poverty Committee actually recommended that we search for a way to provide meaningful input for people with lived experience into the development of the enhanced CHS. And we worked with the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, which has a lived experience director. I'm not using that correct title, but they do have a staff person that is in charge of working with people with lived experience for this purpose. And they created a group of people that they recommended to be a part of this working group. It's a very diverse group of experiences, from having long periods of homelessness, shorter periods of homelessness, ethnically diverse, LGBTQ representation, veterans representation. We have a youth representative. So it's a really great group of people. We're very excited about having them involved. And LASA does actually also provides a stipend for their involvement in attending meetings and things like that. So we're really looking forward to continuing to work with them. It's been a great experience so far. So we really thank the committee for your suggestion on that.
Terrific, thank you. And were all of the performance metrics from the original CHS transferred over into this
Those
new
that we have
process?
been, yes, those that we've been, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
Those that we've been collecting data on, yes. If there were metrics that were proposed when the framework was adopted that have not ended up being feasible for departments to report data on, we've provided the opportunity to kind of reset, and with the expectation that if we're adding metrics, we are going to be able to get data on those. But yes, the data that we've been collecting will continue to be collected and enhanced by additional metrics.
And the section 3.4, the vulnerable populations,
yes.
It's probably in the report, but if you could just expand briefly on who exactly they are and how are we positioning our resources to better address their needs?
So as it's currently framed, the vulnerable populations that were initially called out in the framework are youth, victims of domestic violence, veterans, families, single adults, chronically homeless, women, elderly, persons with pets, LGBTQ, and persons with disabilities. But I think the nice thing, or I think the thing that's great about this strategy is that there's always something to learn about how we're implementing programs and where there are places that we need to fill in for, or needs that were not anticipated, and those should be raised up through that particular strategy and then communicated across where they're needed, whether it's outreach or shelter or housing or those other program and systems strategies.
And is there a space to deal with recently arrived undocumented immigrants?
I believe so, yes. I think that would be, especially given the different restrictions of other sources of funding from other levels of the government, there's a lot of work being done for how we can even leverage local funds that are not as restrictive with, or where do we put money so that we can provide the same level of service regardless of status. But so I definitely think that there's an opportunity within this strategy to understand whether and how, if those programs and systems are meeting those needs, or if there are additional tweaks that are needed, we can work with the leads of that strategy on that.
Years ago, in dealing with homelessness at the Los Angeles River, I discovered a whole population of day laborers who are undocumented immigrants who are homeless and living at the river. So we know that those populations are out there, and they're not necessarily new. So I just think that's an important factor as well. All right. Thank you. Colleagues. Mr. Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to Meg and the team for the work on this. Thank you for putting together the working group of people who've been homeless. I can't say lived experience. I've never heard anybody who is homeless or formerly homeless say lived experience. So I know agencies like that, but it just sounds a little ridiculous. How are we? That was sort of on the general reframing, right, of the enhanced strategy. There are various different elements of it that I'd be interested in getting the feedback from people who both have been, but also people who are homeless on. You know, the one thing I hear constantly is that as much as we think we're doing a bang-up job here, out on the street, people who are homeless say, you know, A, I've not seen an outreach worker, or B, somebody came to me and they gave me their card, and then when I called them, their voicemail is full and I can't leave a message, or they're no longer there because they've moved on. And I hear that constantly. So I would love to see us, for the things that are relevant, you know, as an example, the linkage fee nexus study isn't one, but you know, for the outreach stuff in particular, for how different programs are working, I would love to get the feedback, both of recently people who are no longer homeless, but people who are homeless, because that will help us identify what the actual barriers are, because I don't think we identify them very well here. It's just the nature of it. So I'd love to...
There's intent and then there's the...
Yeah,
what happens.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we're not going to get it right unless we're listening on the other end. Just a couple other quick questions. Study shared housing programs, you know that's a particular
We're working on that one right now.
obsession of mine. So we'll be getting a report back on that soon?
Yes.
Okay.
We're working on the report now, actually.
Okay. And then there was another one, just sort of thumbing through it. We had said in the original 7L that we were going to establish a planning and zoning policy on homeless micro units. And it talks about how, we've done it refers to a different section, and it says a number of different things we've done, but it doesn't really specifically talk about micro units.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of stuff in here that we said, particularly on changing the rules and making it easier to get housing, where we said we were going to do a number of things, and they all required a report back and a study. And a lot of them feel like they ended at their report back and study phase. That's not on you, that's on us, because the momentum died, or nobody picked it up, or was too controversial, or didn't have the bandwidth, or whatever. But where did micro units go?
So actually, microunits and a number of those other policies that were rolled into 7Q, which was implement House LA, microunits was addressed through the permanent supportive housing ordinance. There were one of the changes to, or kind of there's a lot more flexibility on unit size in the permanent supportive housing units as far as getting that density within the allowed floor area. And so there are, that is how that was addressed, was in the PSH.
That's only for PSH units, though, right? Because I think when we discussed it, I know Mr. Cedillo, I think, basically wanted it for any unit. I don't know if that's where the body wanted, but I think it was also intended to apply to affordable units and as a way to get more housing at a lower cost period. So I'm curious. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Matt has a comment.
Yeah,
on that.
did you?
Oh, Matt, I didn't know you were still here. Sorry.
Sure, Matt Kolesny, Planning Department. Yeah, we looked very closely at the micro units and basically established we don't have a minimum unit size. Like some other cities like New York, they had to actually do a micro unit ordinance to actually fix their minimum unit sizes.
Yeah.
We don't have that. In Los Angeles, we have building code regulations, but those aren't really changeable. So what we concluded is really micro units and having smaller, more affordable units is really a function of allowing more density, allowing more units per that lot. And it's also all largely a function of parking. Because if you have now 10 units instead of 5 units, you've got to double your parking, and so often that's not a win-win proposition for developers. So we've sort of looked at it through those angles of density and parking, and the TOC program is another program that's recently been developed by the Planning Department through Measure JJJ that actually does address head-on density and parking, and we are seeing a lot of smaller, more affordable micro units. I don't know if you'd call them all micro units, but certainly we're seeing smaller unit sizes come through that program because of those allowances. Those are mixed income often. They can be 100% affordable.
Yeah.
They can be PSH. They can also be mixed income. So, but certainly open any other council direction on micro units. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think there's a lot of the housing stuff that we didn't carry forward on that we need to revisit. I'm curious. I don't know that if it was. And I know you've made a number of suggestions that need to be moved forward on that are still in committee. There was, I don't remember if it's in this or not, so I apologize if I get this wrong, but there was a proposal made a couple years ago that I think HCID and planning were looking at to restrict evictions, even in non-RSO units, to good cause evictions only. I don't remember if that was in here or not, but if anybody could tell me what's going on with that. I know council directed, I think, planning and HCID to do a report on it.
Are you aware of that one?
I'll just say what I know. Matt Kolesny, Planning. There was some conversation at this at the Housing Committee, I think maybe 2 years ago, really asking for reports on how much further can we go, the City of Los Angeles, in terms of protecting renters, in terms of evictions. and demolitions, and I believe HSA did do a report and identified some solutions. There were some changes that did come out of that, but part of it is really what we ran up to is state law. In terms of state law and the Costa-Hawkins Act, essentially allowing, Costa-Hawkins today, state law allows a developer to remove their tenants if they say they're getting out of the rental market business, and so
Yeah, well, there's Ellis Act stuff, sure, but then there's I know Santa Monica has tighter restrictions on evictions than we do, even in their non-RSO units. And I know that the council instructed there to be a report. I just don't know if that report came back, if anybody's seen it. If I could get some follow-up on that, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it, but I'll look into it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harris Dawson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for staying on top of this work and giving us a sense of where we're headed. I did not review the documents with this in mind, so I may be asking something that's there and I didn't see it because I wasn't thinking about this. But given our conversation this morning, which some of you at least were a part of, I'm just curious about, that was a great expression, Ms. Barclay. Given our conversation, I'm just curious about, particularly when you're engaging folks who survived homelessness or who are recently recovered from homelessness, what the impact of our enforcement or lack of coherent enforcement strategy of cleanups, what impact that has on people or not. I think about that a lot because part of our conversation is that our enforcement strategy is just uneven and hard to predict. So I have a person who lives on the block near my house that everybody loves because he cleans up the whole block every day. So people bring him food and everything, and so we talk to him. And so I was looking for him a couple months ago, and he wasn't there. And then I saw him recently, and he says, "Well, now they're enforcing 5611, so I have to be gone by 5:30 in the morning." And then a couple days ago, I see him, and I'm saying, "Hey, what happened to 56? Oh, they told me that they're not doing it anymore." So, and I'm like, "How do you know the rules? I'm on the city council, and somehow you're getting information about enforcement." But my point is, it impacts because he's a person that's going to have to be talked to for months by the same person before he trusts someone enough to go into services. So every time you break his schedule, you have to start from zero. And I'm just curious if you were able to collect any data on that or mine any opinions or get a sense of how that's impacting people who are homeless. We get a lot of feedback as council members from residents and business owners on how the enforcement affects them. We don't get as much from people experiencing homelessness.
Yeah, the only information I have is anecdotal and very consistent with how you've described it, that the policies are inconsistent at times and difficult to understand from the person on the street, from their perspective. I think that there's definitely been a lot of work, especially in the last 10 or 12 months, to try and be more consistent from the other side. I think we all understand, or city folks understand, which rule they're enforcing when they're enforcing it, but it looks the same to the person on the street who's being told to move, or that they have too much stuff. And I know that there's been a lot of effort to try and make that a lot more seamless, and that it takes a lot of training and a lot of especially as we're hiring more and more teams, there's more and more people to train and be trying to even just enforce those policies consistently. But that's definitely, like I said, there's not a lot of data, but all of the anecdotal information that I've heard is very consistent with what you're saying.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris Dawson. Structure and established systems and consistency in outreach and data collecting is what is going to put a roof over a lot of our folks who are experiencing homelessness, their heads. And so I'm glad you asked that question, Mr. Harris Dawson, because that prompts me to ask you, what level of data is being shared with you?
Yeah. Well, that's another reason why I'm really excited about the street outreach strategy. That was one of the really the most exciting tables at the day-long session that we had was because that strategy includes the LAHSA outreach strategy leads. It includes representatives from PD and from sanitation all working together to come up with what do we need to do to be consistent and to make these things, make these policies work. And also, we will be getting that outreach data now as a part of the metrics reporting on that strategy. And LAHSA has really
from whom? From LAHSA?
From LAHSA. But the thing, LAHSA has done some really incredible work to coordinate not just the teams that are hired through the funding that they get that work directly for LAHSA, but they're also coordinating the multidisciplinary teams that are hired by the Department of Health Services and the outreach teams that are hired and implemented through service providers. And they've gotten them together by service planning area and actually divided every area up, and they can tell you which team is the lead in any, they call them hubs, sub area of a spa, in the county. So now they have at least one team that is reaching out, and so they're able to also leverage effort that way and make sure that there's coverage around the entire county, but also be able to collect the data from those teams and know what areas it's coming from.
So it sounds,
we're going to be getting a lot better data and more data around how many people have been contacted all the way through how many people have been housed. So there's different levels of, as you said, Mr. Harris-Dawson, there are people that would have to get contacted 10, 12 times. Now there's going to be one team in that area, so it will be a consistent set of people. But 10, 12 times before they're willing to take the next step and take whatever help it is that gets them into maybe getting to an assessment, which might take even more time. And so, but they are tracking that data. So people who are contacted, engaged, the assessments that are done all the way into whether or not they've been able to get housing.
It's going to all be in the execution.
Yep.
Right? There's a homeless individual who lives in my neighborhood, Mr. Harris-Dawson, that has behavioral issues and is a parolee and sometimes will be menacing and threatening, and sometimes he's not. I would be very curious to see if there's a case open for him. He comes from the neighborhood. He grew up there. I talked to him once. And it'd be interesting to see, because LAHSA should by now have a very good case assisting this man, and I have my doubts.
Yeah. Well, there's issues with privacy of them being able to actually report back on when a referral is made or a report is made, but they're not able to say, yes, we've been working with
we don't have to have their names or anything, but we absolutely need the data because we need to know if these people are being housed.
Right.
And so that's a conversation that we'll dive deeper into in the short term.
And I think just for the future, thinking about a way to have an outward-facing way of talking about the loss of services, because the person I'm describing, the information I know about him, including his name, is widely known in the neighborhood. So when the government shows up and they don't know anything about this person, everybody goes, well, like, what are you guys doing? Like, So it doesn't inspire confidence when there's no way to communicate that.
This person who is in my neighborhood, the interaction he has most often is with a senior lead officer. And that's just the reality. And so we need to change that. Yeah. All right. Yes, Mr. Bonner.
For HSID, the motion I was referring to was 17-0454, which the council approved in 2017, June 2017, which gave HSID and the city attorney 30 days to come back with recommendations on a just cause eviction ordinance based on stuff they've been doing in Alameda, Emeryville, Mountain View, Oakland, and Richmond, and I can now add Santa Monica to that. 17-0454.
Thank you. So we'll have a report on that particular motion next time you make the presentation. So having said it all, I think we're good to go. Here are some recommendations. I recommend that we approve the enhanced CHS with following amendments. Instruct the CAO to include City Council as a lead department in strategies where the mayor's office is also named as lead department. Closer collaboration. And B, include the crosswalk, the supplemental, as an attachment to the enhanced CHS, and instruct the chief legislative analyst with assistance of the CAO's office to report as necessary on any council instruction of the original CHS strategy briefs, including recommendations, narrative, and metrics that did not transfer over to the enhanced CHS, which may be none, since you said they transferred, but just to take a good close look at that. 3, instruct HCID with the assistance of LASA and the CAO to report back on strategies to better assist immigrants facing homelessness, with the goal of including these strategies in enhanced CHS. And without objection, that'll be the order. Thank you. And that ends item 3. And colleagues, we still have some general public comment. Do we have Caleb Havens, Don Garza, Danielle Graham, and Ann McCall present? Caleb Havens, Don Garza, Danielle Graham, Ann McCall. You may begin, sir.
Hey guys, I'm Caleb. Thanks for hearing our general public comments. I'm really confused why the refresh spot isn't on this agenda. We asked it to be last week in the public safety meeting. We sent your staff several emails asking us to look at the new phone for the refresh spot. You claim to be wanting consulting people with lived homeless experience and the people who serve them every day. And 12 of us came last week and said we need a new home for the refresh spot. Haven't heard anything about what you're doing. Weezar's office asked about that location for hygiene last year. You guys still have not done anything as far as I know on that item, and that is something that several residents with lived homeless experience asked you to make a move on last week. So I'm not sure what this entire play was about this afternoon to make us, see that you're doing stuff, but that's what we came to talk about. It's still not on the agenda. If it's not next week, if you think this meeting was disruptive, just wait. See you next week.
Caleb, don't go anywhere, Caleb. Please.
Man, you put public comment at the end.
No, please have a conversation with Meg Barkley, and because there is an update in terms of.
Just talk to Charles. I gotta go, dude. I appreciate it.
Okay. Then I'll tell everyone else since you have to leave. But there's a conversation happening with Meg's team and Jose Weezar's office. They're right here if you wanted to talk with them.
Work faster. People are shitting themselves to death.
All right. We have not dropped the ball. It's a main focus. I've had several conversations with Mr. Weezar, myself, and with Martin, who is here today. So just because it's not agendized does not mean that we've dropped the ball on this. We know it's urgent, and we feel that a solution is at hand. Caleb didn't hear that last part, but what do you do? Don Garza, followed by Danielle Graham, followed by Ann McCall.
That's what I was here for, too, because the word went out that this community refresh spot that has been so diligently and so wonderfully initiated by the community, with the community and the community in mind, and it's 24-hour services is very important. But I want to just congratulate or let you guys know that what we just witnessed today is exactly what we as advocates do every day, which is be an advocate. And that is what you guys just did with the homeless people in your neighborhood today. This is how it works, guys. This is the way it works. We have to advocate. That person has to have an advocate and be able to come to the social service people and let them know somebody is behind them and watching and making sure and wanting them to see those services. You guys actually advocated for your neighborhood person today in public. That's how it's done.
Thank you. Danielle Graham, followed by Ann McCall.
Hi, I'm Danielle Graham. I work at the Refresh Spot. We service monthly about 16,000 people, 600 people daily. The capacity is really, really small. We're getting a lot of different people dressed. They're homeless. They're in the streets. The Refresh Spot has also created a lot of community jobs for a lot of folks. About 30 of us are currently working. Also, I just wanted to say that we're urgent for another space because there's so many people coming through there each and every day, regularly. I'd just like to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for attending. Ann McCall?
Okay. I'm part of the coalition that helped create the Refresh Spot, hand in hand with the city. I just want to say that there is a humanitarian crisis that I know you all are very aware of. And the majority of that crisis is within Skid Row. The Refresh Spot is a success story. This is something that you, as a city council, should be promoting. It's a success story. It needs to be duplicated, and it needs to continue. So we really need you to work on making sure we could get this spot at 6th and Crocker. That's kitty corner from where the refresh spot is now. It's my baby. I want to see it live and succeed and continue to grow throughout the city. So, yeah, so just please, sir, all of you and ma'ams, we need your help to get this done and to make sure it is seamless, the transition, and we continue on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Charles Porter, followed by Ginny Bridow, followed by Tom Grode, and then Antonio.
Good afternoon. So you already hear the passion. You know, people have been reaching out, and we're trying to just make sure we have a champion to help us find a permanent location. The motion was introduced in November 18-1119 to evaluate properties, one of which was 606 East 6th Street, which is what we've been advocating for, and it's something that the community really wants, which could extend the crisis response. One thing that we also highlight, that this is a unique space designed by the community for the community, and it's funded through LASA's 4 partners, homeless health care, social model, Fidelity, and Goodwill. But also it was developed by Skid Row Community Improvement Coalition. And so we also continue to work closely with staff from the mayor's office to give input. But this would be the ideal location for us to expand the great services that are already occurring at the refresh spot. So whatever support you can offer, we appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Ginny Bridow, followed by Tom Grode and Antonio.
Hi, it's Ginny Bridow.
Oh, sorry,
That's
Ginny
okay.
Bridow.
It happens. So my name is Ginny. I've lived downtown since 2004. The girl in the back has never known a different neighborhood. I'm a Girl Scout leader. I'm obviously a mom. I work full-time. My husband does too. It's important to note that I don't like showering. I will usually, on Friday, wear the same clothes that I've been wearing on Friday all the way through church on Sunday. And I'll shower on Sunday evening, and then I shower every workday. But why that's important to know, and I know it's a giggle part, but it truly is. It's my decision, and I have the opportunity to go into the bathroom, lock the door, and it's my space. It's really important that the refresh spot remain open and be expanded. 606 Crocker spot is ideal.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bridow. Tom Grode, followed by Antonio, and then Amar W.
I'm here to speak about the refresh spot, but in listening to some of your comments, one of the reasons the refresh spot is so excellent is because of the process that Skid Row went through to create it, which was a very strong, honorable, honest process with City Hall, where people listen to one another, whether it's the mayor's office listening to homeless people, whether it's homeless people listening to the mayor's office, which also doesn't always happen. And so we came together to create this thing, and the process gave it a lot of its credibility. It's given it a lot of why the people who work there are so motivated. It's part of why the people who use it are so grateful and so protective of it. It truly is owned by the community in a very profound sense. And in that sense, it is a model for the rest of the city, because what I heard today is not what we experienced in creating the refresh spot.
Thank you. Antonio, followed by Amar W. It might be Amare with a misspelled W at the end. And then Yvonne Michelle Autry.
Pardon me, that's my mistake.
Oh, it's okay. Amara, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I am on the Downtown Los Angeles Neighborhood Council. I'm also a homelessness liaison, but I am speaking in my personal capacity and with little voice, so forgive me.
It's okay.
One of the things I wanted to do is second some of the input that has been brought to light regarding the strategies for the homelessness strategy. And one of the things that I have recognized is that some of the metrics, they seem to be very top-down metrics that support the system of people who create the system and not necessarily getting input from the people that the system is affecting. And I think it's really critical that that change really soon. And lived experience is great, but to speak to people who are currently on the streets, I think is even more critical. I did want to say I'm in support of the refresh spot, and I hope that they do get a permanent home. Let's get to know that there is a conversation at hand. And last, I just want to say something on an item that was actually heard this morning. I do urge the city to go to trial for the Mitchell case, not because the merits are not clear, but because of the implications of it and how it will affect.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have Antonio here? Is there an Antonio? No. Yvonne Michelle Autry.
Yes, thank you. Forgive the tardiness in the submission of my request to speak. Yes, I had taken a year off hiatus. However, I was with the I had the pleasure, of course, to serve my community in working with the Skid Row Improvement Coalition in designing and thankfully, thank God, in finally opening the refresh spot. And so I'd like to advocate on behalf of the Skid Row Community Improvement Coalition for the acquisition of that church and any other permanent location so that the most indigent can continue to be served in the way that the city has continued to neglect. I'd also like to remind you that the funding which has been allocated but had yet to be dispensed or appropriately given to the homeless people per HHHNH. We're still waiting for that. So we'd like that as soon as possible, and we'd like a permanent location. Again, I'm advocating for the church. And I'd also, for this record, sir,
thank you.
If I could make this,
thank you, everyone.
I'd also, for
everyone
this
gets
record, like
1
to
minute.
request the firehouse.
So thank you.
Because that was taken away from
All
us
right.
and it's never been developed.
Thank you. We're done. Thank you.
Under Jan Perry, who was used by the city
All
to
right.
take that from the community.
And that
Like
ends
that.
public comment, and I believe without any other items, Mr. Reef, is that complete? All right, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.